Customer case studies. How do you plan them, capture them, write them, and share them? When we first started creating case studies for HowdyGo, which is a software product, I was really confused about where to begin. There's just not a lot of good resources out there that sort of help you through that process, understand the way that you should go about doing it and what the purpose of a case study is in the first place. So I'm going to do that from start to finish. We're going to talk about what you're trying to achieve with your case studies. I'm also going to share some tips on the process of selecting customers and how you can reach out to customers to get them on board and have them commit to doing a case study with you. I'll share the tools and the software that I use in order to capture case studies. And I'm also going to go through the process of distilling that down, reusing those marketing assets in a variety of different circumstances, and just how useful case studies can be for a bunch of different things. It's not just about sort of sharing a case study on your website. There's more to it nowadays than that. One thing to remember when you're making any marketing materials is that you should go in with a little bit of an idea about why you're making that marketing material in the first place. And case studies are really no different. It's not really so much about just telling a customer's story. I mean, that is interesting, but it's not really going to kind of give you any asset to actually sell to your customers. So a better way to deal with this is to go into it trying to create an asset which is actually helpful for a particular step in the process or challenge that you're facing from a marketing perspective. So let's take a look at a bit of a framework that you can use for coming up with case study ideas and who your customer should be. So the first example that we have is a job to be done or a common use case associated with your product. This is a really helpful category because it basically means you can find customers who are using your product in that way. This is great as a tool for your marketing. You can basically share this with any other customers who come along who might have a similar use case or requirement. The second case study category I would consider is an objection handling case study, which is basically a case study geared around handling a prospect's objection to using your product. So it's an example of a customer who has maybe run into that objection in the past and has overcome it in order to start using your product successfully. The final category I would consider is something that a sales rep gets asked for on a regular basis. So maybe it's somebody who is interested in your product, but they want to know more about the onboarding experience. That's a great case study. You just focus it entirely on what the onboarding experience was for a given customer. So because you went into this whole process with a little bit of a plan about the type of case study that you want to write in the first place, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to actually find customers who are willing to talk to you about that particular challenge. And the reason why I've recommended that as the starting point is that when you're working with multiple teams, it's much easier to go to your customer support team, your account executives, and have a chat to them and say, look, I'm looking for a customer who has faced this particular challenge. Take, for instance, one of our case studies, which we wanted to focus on a sales use case for interactive product demos. We knew exactly which customer we should speak to because we know that they've had a great experience with us. We know that they use us for that particular use case. And it just made things so much easier because we're going in there with a little bit of a plan and a little bit of a structure to not only the type of case study that we want to write, but also, the questions that we need to ask in order to build that case study and make it convincing. When you're looking at customers who you want to invite into a case study, you want to find ones which have had a positive experience and have a positive view of your company or product. They've recently gone through the experience so they can speak about it quite easily because they're comfortable with the subject matter. And finally, you want customers who are easy to work with. So if you've got two customers and one of them is a bit larger and perhaps they have a legal team that you would need to work with in order to get sign off on the case study, you might want to go with the other customer who's a little bit easier to work with.
Hello.
So you figured out which customer you are going to reach out to and have on your case study. That's awesome. Everyone in your team is on board. The next thing obviously is to set up the call. So for setting up the call, I would not recommend anything less than an hour. You'll probably get to the end of that hour and be like, oh God, I wish we had another half hour. So an hour and a half is probably better. The other thing I'd say is if somebody in your team has a particularly good rapport with that customer, it's better to work it through them. So have that person send the email or the LinkedIn message, loop you in and coordinate everything from there. The other thing I would suggest is if it's a bigger company and you know that they're going to have to go through a sort of legal sign off, PR sign off process, you should try to be as accommodating with that stuff as you possibly can be. Remember, they are doing you a massive favor by being on this call. So when I do my case studies, the approach that I take to come up with questions and themes is to basically write them all down in a Google Doc. And I literally write out word for word, this is the question that I kind of want to ask this individual. And the questions I will typically gear around the idea of, this is a snippet that I think that they will respond well to. Basically, like design these questions in a way that will give you pieces of content, individual pieces of content. So if you imagine a case study is basically a collection of different quotes, but also you're going to be filming this. So you're hoping you can get these little snippets that can be shared on social media, but also kind of written down and turned into quotes that get incorporated into an article. Design your questions around that idea and tie them together as themes so that there is some cohesive structure sort of built into that conversation from the get-go. I will say in your call, it's probably unlikely that you're going to be perfectly asking these questions every single time, but by having them just written down, you'll be able to quickly skim over it and be like, have we looked through all of these things? These conversations should be sort of natural and free flowing. So if they have, tangents that they want to go down, you follow that. You might even use it as a bit of a voice of customer situation. So they might want to share some of their opinions about how the product is and ways that it can be improved. That's all fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's not like you're going to publish this completely unedited. You're going to look through it all and find little pockets of amazing content that you can share in written form or in video form or in audio form, whatever. When it comes to actually capturing the case study, I have one piece of software that I really, really recommend. I'm not being paid to suggest this piece of software. I just really think that it's a great tool for this particular use case. If you want, you could use Google Meets or Zoom or whatever video conferencing tool you have that can capture the video stream. But the reason I recommend using Riverside.fm is because it splits all of the tracks up. So you actually end up with separate video and audio feeds for every single individual on that call, which makes it so much easier from an editing perspective after the fact. And also they have some amazing tools built in, which make it super simple to basically get a transcript of the entire conversation, which again, just makes it so much easier for editing. You'll be able to find these nuggets of amazing content and then use that as a tool for all sorts of marketing assets. I also use Riverside in combination with CapCut from an editing tool perspective. When it comes to writing content, basically just take that transcript directly out of Riverside and I'll use something like ChatGPT to pick out the themes throughout it. But because you originally planned out your case study conversation with questions and themes all tied together, it's going to hopefully be a little bit easier to do that sort of overarching story after the fact because it's all been planned and structured in the first place. When it comes to actually ending up with the finished product of your case study, I think it helps to consider that it's not just one piece of content. It's about coming up with a handful of different marketing assets that you can use in a variety of different situations. So to begin with, using Riverside means that you get a great video feed of you talking as well as any of the guests that you've got on. It's kind of like a podcast. So you treat it as a podcast. You end up with these little snippets. Here's one now.
Really supportive, responsive. Yeah, I mean, I just from a customer support side of things, you can't ask for anything more, basically.
And this is a great little tool for your LinkedIn or your x.com/Twitter/TikTok/Instagram, wherever you're putting this stuff on the internet. I also think it's really cool to incorporate this kind of media directly into your case study, your written case study on your website. So rather than making people read every single thing and to add a little bit of credibility to the quotes that you're putting into your article, you can basically take your video asset and put it up on YouTube unlisted and embed it directly into the article. And it just gives people a different way to experience the case study that isn't a super boring sort of wall of text. You haven't dramatically paraphrased what they've actually said. You are genuinely conveying what they said in the interview, which again just adds a little bit of credibility, improves the confidence, improves the trust that people feel in this case study. The other thing that I would recommend is that once you've written up your case study and you've got these video assets, you start to incorporate them into your other marketing materials. So, for example, incorporating a link in your feature release emails or your monthly newsletter to your customers. It's a great way to showcase different customers and show that this is how you can use this product, or this is how you can engage with the company. These are sort of people that you're holding up on a pedestal and you're saying, this is a high quality customer who's getting great value out of our product. And I think that that can be helpful for other customers to get an idea for how they can make more use out of your product, which is always a good thing, to get more use out of your product and have those people be a little bit stickier. If you found this video helpful at all, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscribe on YouTube. It just helps me to know that I'm actually producing things that are helpful to you. But otherwise, happy case studying. I would love to hear your thoughts below. If you've got any questions or if you have any comments on how this video could be improved, then let me know as well. Thanks so much. My name's Tom. I'm the co-founder of HowdyGo. If you're interested in interactive product demos for your own SaaS product, check us out on the internet, howdygo.com.